And thank you for joining us today. My name is Carmen Clutter, and I serve as Chief of the Elder Connections Division at the Ohio Department of Aging. I'm pleased to present our third webinar opportunity for grant recipients of ODA's Healthy Aging Grants. We appreciate you spending your time with us and hope that you find this webinar valuable and informative. If you have any additional questions after today's presentation, please reach out to our team at Healthy Aging Grants at age.ohio.gov for support and guidance. Again, thank you, and let's get going. Today's webinar will focus on one main topic, our quarterly report submission. We will review reporting requirements, including the reporting timeline, and what I'm calling our how-to guide, which will provide step-by-step directions on how to complete your reporting and where to submit. Today's session is recorded, and you can view it again for reference. Please be aware that in our email announcement of today's webinar, you received a how-to guide as well as a template you will need to use each quarter to submit your program report. We will go over both those in detail today. Listed on this slide are the quarterly report due dates. You will want to take note of the report period associated with each report due date. You'll notice that the quarterly reporting periods have been updated just slightly. Reporting periods are no longer cumulative, but rather include a 3-month period of time. All grant points of contact will receive an auto-generated reminder from the Ohio Grants portal before quarterly reports are due. These reminder emails should be sent 1 day prior, 7 days prior, and 14 days prior to each report due date. All grant recipients are required to submit program and expenditure data quarterly, with a final closeout report due to ODA by October 31st of 2024. That fifth and final report is essentially your time to liquidate and pay on any previously obligated funds. Please take note, the first quarterly report is due to ODA on or before January 10th of 2024. ODA also has the responsibility to report up to the Ohio Department of Budget and Management on a quarterly basis. So please be sure that your report is submitted on time and is accurate and includes all the required information. As with your application, all reporting, including your quarterly reports and that final closeout report, will be submitted via the Ohio Grants portal. These are known as activity reports in the Ohio Grants portal. You will log into the portal using the same OHID credentials you used when you completed your application. The contact persons you included on your application will have the ability to submit reports so long that you remember to check that box, providing them with permission to do so. All contact persons should have their own OHID profile and can access the Ohio Grants portal individually to submit your reports. So in this example, even though myself and Brutus Buckeye have separate OHIDs, we both have the ability to complete the activity report for our grant. These are the only contacts that will receive the auto-generated notifications from the Ohio Grants portal, reminding you to complete your quarterly reports. In the event you did not include the appropriate contact person to submit your reports, you can request a new contact to be added. That user must first have an OHID. So if that user does not have an OHID, that's your first step. To request an OHID, you'll want to visit ohid.ohio.gov and click Create OHID Account. To complete that account setup, you'll need an email address that you currently have access to, your first and last name, as well as the date of birth. During the account creation process, you'll be prompted to create your unique username and password. Once you have ensured your contact has an OHID, you then can submit a formal request to ODA to have a new contact added to your application and your activity reports. To do so, please email healthyaginggrants@age.ohio.gov. In that email, please provide the contact's name, their email address, their working title, and their phone number. The email address that you provide must be the same email address that they registered with their OHID account. This will ensure that once they log in with their OHID, they will be linked to the appropriate application and have reporting capabilities with your application. The ODA team will add this contact person to your application, and we will advise you when it's been completed. Please only submit requests for those individuals that will actually be completing and submitting your reports each quarter. So there are two main components to each quarter report submission. We have the fiscal activity reports and the program report. We will cover both of those during our time together today. Both reports will be submitted via the Ohio Grants portal. First, let's look at the fiscal activity report. The first step is completing and submitting the fiscal activity report. Once you have logged in to the portal, you should see any and all applications in which your OHID is associated with. If you do not see your application for Healthy Aging Grants, please reach out to our team for assistance. As a reminder, you can reach us at healthyaginggrants@age.ohio.gov. From your home screen, you will view your submitted application and complete that activity report for each quarter. Simply click the hyperlink that states Activity Report. Here is what you'll see when you open your activity report for the Healthy Aging Grants. Each report you submit will be listed in its own row. So to start your activity report, you'll select Submit an Activity Report. Alternatively, if you've already started an activity report or you would like to edit a report you've submitted, you would then select the Open or Edit button, and then you can make changes to that current activity report. If you've already started a submission of an activity report, you'll want to simply click Edit. You do not need to complete a submission in one setting, and you are welcome to edit your report before it's due to ODA. A date notification pop-up will appear asking if you wish to submit an activity report for the upcoming reporting period. Simply click Yes. If pop-ups are blocked on your browser, this could interfere with the performance of the system. Just be aware of that. Here's the main screen that will pop up to submit your activity report. Although it's pretty basic, we're going to take some time to walk through this step by step to ensure that you understand all components. The first section to complete is Summary, so let's look at that closer. Here's the summary section of the activity report. This is the first part that you will fill out. The information at the top of the screen is pre-populated based on the reporting period and your individual grant award. This includes the reporting period, the due date, and the beginning balance of your award. The next 4 boxes need to be entered by you, the subrecipient completing the reporting. Total receipts for reporting period will pre-populate to the initial amount awarded via the ODA Notice of Grant Award. If the pre-populated amount does not match the total amount of the funds you received, you can go ahead and edit that total. For any subsequent quarterly reports, please enter 0 if you received no additional funding. Or if you did receive additional funding from ODA, reflected through a second notice of a grant award, you can edit that there. In this example, the total receipts for the reporting period is $100,000, and that matches the amount on the ODA Notice of Grant Award. In the next box, the interest earned for the reporting period, please simply enter 0. Interest earned is not required to be reported and does not apply to this funding opportunity. Moving on, next you'll enter the total expenditures for your reporting period. Please note that the expenditures reported here should align with the expenditures for the reporting period. The reporting period's pre-populated and detailed at the top of the screen. For this example, our reporting period is October 1st through December 31st, and the expenditures we wish to report are $25,000. The cash on hand amount under the box will automatically be displayed after we enter our expenditures. Finally, you'll enter the amounts obligated for the reporting period in that last box. For this example, the obligated amount is $50,000. Please note that the unobligated balance again will be automatically displayed under that section. If and only if you are working on your closeout reports, that's that final report due to ODA on October 31st of 2024, you will select the box that says closeout report. Please do not select that box if you're not submitting your closeout final reports. Once you are satisfied with the amounts reported in the 4 boxes, you will need to save summary. That was a lot of information, so I think it will be helpful for us to walk through an example together. Before we look at example, I want to send along one quick reminder. There's an important distinction again between expenditures and obligations. Remember, your expenditures are your payments on the funds. All funds must be expended by September 30th of 2024. Financial obligations, on the other hand, those are your commitments of funds for a specific use, and those are usually defined in writing, perhaps as a service contract or an agreement. Remember, all funds must be obligated by June 30th of 2024. So essentially, you need to establish that defined commitment of funds on or before June 30th. So while you need to obligate your funds by the end of June, you have through September 30th to expend on those funds. So let's look at that example. In this example, you'll notice that the receipts or reporting period pre-populated to that initial amount that was awarded via the ODA Notice of Grant Awards. We're using $100,000 as our example here. If for any reason that was incorrect, I could make an adjustment in the box before I save the summary. For bubble 1 above, make sure to enter 0 in the interest earned for the reporting period. Remember, interest earned is not required to be reported or applied to the program for this funding opportunity. For bubble 2 above, we entered the total amount for the expenditures for the reporting period. So in this example, I've already paid $25,000 for this reporting period. So I'm going to report that as my total expenditures here. You'll see that my cash on hand balance now automatically updated to $75,000. This is important because that $75,000 will carry through as a beginning balance on my next report, report 2, which we'll look at here momentarily. And finally, for bubble 3 above, you'll see the total amount of funds that I've already obligated. I've obligated $50,000 of my remaining cash on hand amount. You'll notice that the summary section updates my unobligated balance automatically. So of the remaining cash on hand, $75,000, I've obligated $50,000, which then leaves that $25,000 unobligated. Once these amounts are entered completely and accurately, I'm going to click that Save Summary box to proceed on. Once you save your summary, you will see the Details section appear on the right hand of your screen. If your expenditures are $0, which may be the case for many of you for your first report, you do not need to submit your details. In this case, once you complete your summary with $0 reported for expenditures, you can simply save and submit your activity report. If you do have expenditures to report, however, you'll move on to complete the details section of your activity report. This is where you will report on the total expenditures for your reporting period. In this example, the amount is $25,000, and this is what we need to report on in our details section. The note on this screen reads, the Submit Activity Report button will be available once your activity expenditure total in the Details section equals the total expenditures for the reporting period in the Summary section. This is the goal for this part of the activity report. To get started, you'll first select Add New Activity. An Add Activity box will then pop up for you to enter the details. Under the Project Activity for Expenditure field, a drop-down box will appear. Simply select Other. That should actually be your only option. For the second field, Describe your project activity, you can simply add See Attached or even choose to leave the field blank. You'll add your description in the program report that we'll talk about here in a moment. Finally, in that last field, please add your expenditure amount for the reporting period. Keep in mind, these funds are the total funds you have paid, and these are not your obligated funds. So this amount must match the amount of expenditures that you've reported in your summary section already. Once those fields are entered, simply click Save. So let's go back and look at our example of our activity report. If you remember, in our summary section, we reported that we expended or paid on $25,000 of our award. So you'll see $25,000 reflected here in our activity report. Once you save your activity, you'll see the activity appear in your details section. Because we are keeping reporting to a minimum, you only need to add one activity per reporting period. Your activity should encompass your total expenditures for that entire reporting period, regardless of the number of projects you funded. As an example, if you paid $10,000 towards home modification and $15,000 for nutrition incentives, your total expenditure would be $25,000. You would report that just as one activity of $25,000. Now that you have entered your summary information and your details, you're almost ready to submit your activity report, but be sure to double check it before you hit submit. So back to our first example, we expended $25,000 during the reporting period, and that is reflected in our summary section and in our detail section. The Submit Activity Report button will become available to click on once activity expenditures equal the total expenditures for the reporting period in the summary section. This is indicated in green on the slide. Our final step is to click Submit Activity Report, and we'll be good to go. Once you select that button, your activity report is now officially submitted for ODA review and approval. Before moving on to the program report, let's do one more example together, because the summary section of these reports will change from one report to the next, and there's a few key differences you'll want to keep in mind. So on to this example. This is an example for our second reporting period, and that report is due to ODA by April 10th of 2024. You'll notice on the summary section, the reporting period is October 1st through March 31st. And if you remember, check out our beginning balance, $75,000. Keep in mind our total grant award was $100,000, and to date, we reported that we had expended $25,000 on our last activity report. That left us with a cash on hand balance of $75,000. That means for our second report, we start with a total of $75,000 as our beginning balance, and we will only report on that cash on hand for this reporting period. One of the main differences with all subsequent reports that you submit after that first report is a total receipts for reporting period box. For your second report and all reports that follow, this amount should be zero in most cases. If you did receive additional funds that were not already reported on your previous reports, or you receive a revised notice of grant award from ODA for additional funding, you will enter those amounts in this box. If no additional funds have been received, simply enter $0. Similar to our first report, we're going to enter $0 in the interest earned for the reporting period box. Remember, interest earned is not required to be reported or applied to the program for this funding opportunity. Next, you'll enter the total expenditures for the reporting period. In this example, we spent an additional $50,000 of our original award during this reporting period. You should only report on additional expenses that were not reported on previous reports. By entering $50,000, this means that I've paid out an additional $50,000 of my grant award for allowable grant activities. This is in addition to the $25,000 that I reported I expended in my prior reports. Again, that cash on hand amount will automatically be displayed below and will update as I enter information into the fields. It will take that beginning balance of $75,000 plus the total receipts for the reporting period, less the total expenditures for the reporting period, and automatically calculate. So in this example, that leaves us with a $25,000 cash on hand, which will eventually become the beginning balance for my report 3, and so on. Finally, you must report on the amounts obligated to date. In this example, I have obligated the remaining funds, so I would simply enter $25,000 into that box 4. This leaves me with an unobligated balance of $0. Once all the information is entered, make sure it's complete, make sure it's accurate, and then simply save the summary. As described previously, your next steps would then be to add an activity report in that detail section. And you'll want to make sure that your detail section and your summary section match. Great, so now we've submitted part 1 of 2. Now we're going to look at the second half of the quarterly report submission. Step 2 brings us to completing the program report, which you'll do on a quarterly basis as well. Back to the award page, you'll see the fiscal activity report you just submitted. Next, you will need to upload your program report as an attachment. You'll do this under the Attachments Documents section. You'll select your file and just upload. This screenshot's an example of what the program template looks like. This quarterly reporting template was provided as part of our grant application and as part of your grant agreement. We also included the attachment on our webinar announcement today, and it will soon be posted to our website. If you still can't locate it, no worries. Simply reach out to us at healthyaginggrants@age.ohio.gov, and we'd be happy to assist. You will use this template for all quarterly reports. We'll provide all grantees a final report template for your October 31st submission shortly. Please do not alter the template, but rather fill in the spaces where instructed. Each county should complete 1 report each reporting period. Your program report should be comprehensive. If you have awarded subgrants out to multiple providers, please still only submit 1 comprehensive report. You should also complete this even if you have not yet implemented your programs or services. That's okay. You can indicate that on your report yourself. If you have any other questions completing the report, please make sure to reach out to our team for assistance. We're going to take the next few moments to look a little bit closer at each section of the program report. At the very top, you'll fill in information about your application and who you are. Your application ID is your unique ID that's auto-generated to your application when you complete it. You can locate your application ID by logging into the Ohio Grants portal and reviewing your application. For this example, the application ID from our application is HB33-ALI 490678-049071. The county and the name of the person completing the report is self-explanatory and also needs to be completed. That reporting period entered should also match the reporting period for the activities that you've described and will describe in your program report. Next up, you'll need to identify 2 grant metrics for the reporting period: the total number of unduplicated consumers served and the number of types of services that you funded. Unduplicated consumers means you are only counting an individual served by your grant funds once, regardless of the number of services they may have received. Let's say that Alice Brown received home delivered meals and a home modification service. Even though Miss Brown received 2 services, we'd only count her as one person, one unduplicated consumer. In the same scenario, let's say that our county has only funded home delivered meals and home modifications so far. We would report that as 2 types of services. The next 2 sections ask you to estimate the proportion of funds used to date on services you've delivered. This section specifically asks you to consider priority populations, including older Ohioans with low to moderate income levels, those unemployed, or those with food or housing insecurity. As outlined in your grant agreement, you may self-identify at-risk older Ohioans. And if you've done just that, you can identify the other priority populations that you have aimed to serve. This brings us on to our final quantitative section of the report template. Here you'll be asked to estimate the proportion of funds that you've expended to date for our 3 priority service areas: food assistance, housing assistance, and internet access and digital literacy. You'll need to estimate the proportion of funds used or expended to date, as well as the number of consumers that you've served with those funds. Again, it's okay to have a blank category. We know many of you are just getting started. Finally, you'll complete the qualitative section of the program report by providing narrative describing your grant activities and the impact or perhaps anticipated impact of these funds within your local area. You will report on this each quarter because we know that grant activities can fluctuate from one quarter to the next. A few tips as you work to complete the first quarter one report. Remember, that's due to ODA on January 10th of 2024. You may find that you don't have expenditures or activities to even report on. That's okay. We understand that it takes time to sub-award grant funds out or even enter into contracts with providers for grant activities. Please simply fill out what's applicable for your grant. For example, maybe you've already jumped into housing assistance through contracting with a handy person for simple home modifications, but you have yet to fund any nutrition assistance services. In this scenario, you can indicate the percent of funding that you've obligated for housing assistance to date, as well as the number of consumers who have received that home modification. You can add not applicable or a similar message for the area of food assistance. These details included in your program report will be reported up to the Ohio Department of Budget and Management, as well as our executive leadership team. As you can imagine, there'll be several attachments submitted to ODA. To help in our review of all the quarterly reports, it's crucial that you do follow our naming convention for that file. Healthy Aging Grant - Quarter X Program Report - County Name. As an example, if Adams County is submitting their first quarterly report, they will name their program report as follows: Healthy Aging Grants - Quarter One Program Report - Adams. Once you have your program report finalized, it's now ready to be submitted, and you'll add that file as an attachment shown here. Take note, you'll see the attachment appear under your documents list. And now we've submitted part 1 and part 2 of our quarterly report, which means our quarterly report submission is now complete. Congratulations, and we thank you in advance for submitting that report on time. The next steps associated with their quarterly report submission is ODA review and approval. ODA will now review both components of your report submission, that fiscal activity report and your program report. You will receive auto-generated emails from the Ohio Grants portal when your activity report has been reviewed and accepted. If your activity or program report requires revision, ODA may send it back to you for review. You will receive an auto-generated email that your report has been sent back. Instructions will be provided to you as what needs to be revised and resubmitted. Please know that our team is here to support all activities associated with this grant, from application to execution and on to reporting. For additional details, we encourage you to view our websites, which features frequently asked questions and helpful resources. We do update our website as needed to include the most up-to-date information and helpful resources. So if you have not checked out the website since it first launched in October, don't be a stranger, go check it out. Finally, should you have any additional questions or concerns that we did not address during today's webinar, please reach out to us. You are welcome to engage with our team via emailing healthyaginggrants@age.ohio.gov. Thank you again for your time today. We look forward to reviewing our first Healthy Aging Grants reports in January. On behalf of the entire ODA team, I want to wish you a happy and healthy holiday season and the very best to you, your family, and our constituents that you will support in the new year. Thank you.